What is up, creatives? This is Tom, welcome back to another video. I hope you are all doing well. So yesterday was a bit of an emotional day for me. I finally said goodbye to my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. This is the camera that I've been using for the first sort of year of freelancing, which you guys know, like this is the first year where I've sort of been working for myself full-time shooting videos. So a bit of a clickbaity title, but it is pretty much fact. Like, this camera has made me the majority of my income this year, which has been it's just been an amazing piece of gear to sort of talk about. I should have probably shot this video whilst I actually had the camera in my hand, because I'm just going to be having to use this cage, this Pocket 4K cage, as like a demonstrative example for the camera. But basically I want to talk about my experiences with the Pocket 4K, some of the things I absolutely love about the camera and have loved whilst using it. It's finally just time, I think, to say goodbye. Some of the things that I found difficult and sort of built towards me actually moving on camera systems, changing the camera, and then overall finally why I did just decide to switch and what I'm going to be going and shooting with moving forward. I think just as a general overview, a general rule of thumb, do not let any of my opinions in this video sort of sway you. I actually still think the Blackmagic Pocket 4K or the 6K are some of the most affordable, most amazing cameras for their price tag. Like, they are priced so competitively that, you know, I did weigh up a few times whether it's even worth selling this camera before I could, you know, put the money, because it's not a substantial, crazy amount of money that's invested in the camera body. Is it worth actually just keeping it on my shelf and having the option to use it? In the end, I did decide to sell it because it's, you know, it takes the sting off a new camera system. But overall, like I say, I think these are just an amazing, amazing camera. Blackmagic has done some incredible things with these camera systems. And now we're going to kick off with the things I absolutely loved about using the camera for the last year. Right, so let's talk about the image. Now, the image is pretty much the most important thing that when you're coming out of, that you want out of a camera. And the image on the Pocket 4K, the Pocket 6K as well, but we're talking specifically about the 4K, is just incredible. Like, especially if you can shoot in Blackmagic RAW, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. But like, the image that you get out of these cameras, I shot the majority of my stuff in ProRes, and it's just an amazing, amazing picture. I think I've said it before on the channel, but this camera is the first time that I've used a camera and just been completely pleased with the image. Like, I've never felt restricted in terms of the image coming out of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. The frame rates that the camera offers are also amazing. You can shoot very good 1080p in these sort of higher frame rate options. With the newer Blackmagic update, you can shoot I think it's 2.7K at 120 frames a second. I might be slightly wrong on that number, but you know, there's a really good variety of frame rate options, and the 4K 60 on the camera is just amazing. Never had to worry about overheating issues or anything like that on this camera. It's just an absolute powerhouse in terms of picture and frame rates. There's a reason this camera is so popular, and these are that. Another one which isn't talked about sort of massively is the ability to very, very quickly change all of your camera settings right at the touch of a beautiful big 5-inch display on the back of the camera. Like, that is just a super feature, especially when you're working with, you know, these little mirrorless cameras where the displays are tiny and it takes you a while to fill around with the settings. The Blackmagic is just there. Everything is there, presented quickly. Pretty much the best interface that I've ever used coming off a camera ever. And let's talk about the rigging. I've done a number of rig build videos. There will be some people that have joined this channel exclusively from those rig videos, and I've absolutely loved rigging up this camera. Like, it's the first time I've actually properly rigged camera systems, and I've learned that pretty much from scratch using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, and that's just been like super fun. I've absolutely loved it. You guys have loved it here on the channel, and I'm not going to forget that. It's just a fantastic you know, thing and skill that hopefully I've learnt, and I'm going to take that forward definitely on the camera systems that I decide to move on to. And then the next thing is it's just unbelievably reliable. The Pocket 4K is just a beast of a camera in terms terms of reliability. I never had problems with it. It pretty much never, like crashed or had just any issues. It was just a real workhorse for the last year or so. And as I say, I've made like over $10,000, closer to $15,000, pretty much just dedicated on the work that I've done just on this camera in the last sort of 9 months or so. All right, now we're getting on to the gritty part of this video, the things which I didn't enjoy and, have ultimately culminated in me deciding to leave this camera system behind, and why really in the last sort of couple of months or so, the camera's been sitting on my shelf and has just become a bit of an expensive paperweight. So first of all, this is the prevailing thing, is it's the battery life. Now, there are ways, of course, and you'll have seen them on the rig videos I've made on the Pocket 4K, of working around the battery life and making it basically that, you don't need to rely on the tiny little battery inside the Pocket 4K, but the battery life is abysmal on these cameras. They last 15 minutes tops, and it can be closer to 10 if you're actually just shooting, maybe you're stopping and starting, record a lot, that type of thing. This is not a good battery life in terms of a camera system, and it means basically that you just can't use the internal battery for anything other than just, maybe you're changing a rig over and you just need it to power on for a couple of minutes. You just can't rely on this battery. And I do need a system that at least sometimes, I'm not saying I need it all the time, but I need the option to be able to, I need a couple of hours where I'm not going to be able to hook up a V-mount battery. Can I rely on that camera to do this? And we'll come on to sort of how this camera just didn't really in the end start fitting my needs. We'll discuss that a little bit later on, but overall, it's like if you have the time to spend on a shot and you want it looking great, these are fantastic cameras at the best sort of price point, the most affordable price point that you can pretty much get on the market, and you're going to give you an amazing image, but they are not good for sort of run and gun, stop and start situations. Sort of piggybacking off the back of that is that we already talked about the rigging and how much I enjoyed it, but always having to rig this camera up, and at the very least having, a pretty big sizable camera rig. I know that you can sort of strip them down, have just a cage and an SSD and stuff like that, but overall the rigs did become a bit restrictive in just the fact that I needed a rig all the time, and as someone who also shoots with mirrorless cameras, in the end that just became a bit of a headache. And there were times that I loved shooting handheld with the Pocket 4K. There's also times that I just need to literally just pick up a camera and get a couple of shots. The autofocus is a bit of a subjective one because there's times where I don't even touch autofocus, but there is times where it's also very nice. After shooting with the EOS R for the last sort of 6 months, 8 months or so, shooting with this camera has been a dream in terms of autofocus. The autofocus is unbelievable on it for things like eye tracking. When you're shooting an interview, basically you just won't miss focus for the whole interview, and you can have a nice wide shot on the manual focus Blackmagic Pocket 4K. That's sort of what I've been doing, but it would be nice to have two cameras with reliable autofocus, and that's a contributing factor into why I've decided to leave. And then the final thing, which sort of was the final straw, is I'm doing quite a lot of gimbal work. Recently I'm shooting for a bunch of restaurants and doing some hotel work, and the Pocket 4K is just a faff to run on a gimbal. I'm not saying you can't do it. Again, there are plenty of people online building these giant Frankenstein rigs with a gimbal and a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, but overall it just becomes a bit of a faff. It's a manual focus, like you don't have the option of autofocusing, which again on a gimbal, it's just nice if you're in a restaurant or a hotel. You just want autofocus on your center point, and that's just going to be like, you don't want to be messing around with manual focus whilst you're on a gimbal and you've got clients there. It just all becomes, basically the process was a lot harder than it needed to be. With the EOS R, I can just literally just mount it straight away on my gimbal and it's ready to go, and the battery life lasts for 5 hours. So this is the sort of contrast that I was dealing with. All right, so here we go, and I feel like overall, we've sort of been discussing it as we've gone, but overall, my feeling on this camera, it just really wasn't fitting what I needed. And again, don't get me wrong, the image you can get out of this camera is just amazing, but personally, I feel like that there's other cameras that are going to fit my needs just a little bit better. I think the ability to shoot 10-bit 422 internally is just amazing on the Pocket 4K, but you can get pretty close with some other camera systems. The camera system which I'm actually going to be moving to is the Fuji system. I'm going to be adapting all my Canon lenses, and I'm excited to pick up the Fuji X-T4. That's the camera that I've actually ordered, and you know, I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a comparable image quality out of that camera that I was getting out of the Pocket 4K, and it has the ability that I can run it on a gimbal nice and easily, and it has autofocus that I can rely on as well. So all of these things are sort of adding up and building, and you know, overall I just feel like it's probably going to be a better fit, and hopefully I can find you know, a nice decent compact camera rig, because I would like the option of sort of rigging up the X-T4 a little bit as well and getting things nice and good for handheld shooting. Again, the last thing is that I don't shoot in Blackmagic RAW. Now, I still edit on Final Cut Pro X. It's the most efficient editor that I've found. There are people that absolutely swear by Resolve now, and I've never sort of taken a plunge in going for it. And really, that is another huge contributing factor, because I'm not totally getting the most out of this camera. The Pocket 4K is an unbelievable camera, and Blackmagic RAW is a fantastic codec of footage to work with. Like, the grading and the customization that you get out of it is just absolutely insane, again, for a camera of this price, but I wasn't really utilizing that. And again, for a lot of the projects that I actually work on, I don't need RAW functionality, because a lot of the stuff which I do is just, it's all commercial. It's just, it's actually better for me to, like, sometimes I don't even shoot log for a lot of the footage that I'm working with, just because I need to know on shoot that it's looking great. I'm not going to have any hiccups later down the line in post. Okay guys, there's some sort of thoughts and feelings. Maybe if you were looking at buying the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, maybe it's sort of opened your eyes into some of the real world usage of this camera. Again, I think for filmmakers and artists, this is just an unbelievable camera system. But I do think for sort of independent content creators, independent videographers, this is maybe not the camera system for you, even though, like I said, it has been a fantastic camera for me to use. I just finally decided that it was time to move on. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video, found it useful or helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section down below. I'll be down there or answering as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.